Max Harper had always been a curious man, though his curiosity often landed him in trouble. His colleagues at the Human Interstellar Embassy on Zithra had learned early on that Max's habit of wandering off during tour could be both a blessing and a curse. He had an eye for details others missed, yet he had a knack for entering places he had no business in. Today, however, would be a day even he could not have predicted. The Zithurian royal palace was nothing like anything Max had seen before. Its walls shimmered with a metallic sheen that seemed alive, and intricate patterns of light danced across the floors like flowing water. He had been given a guided tour earlier, but at some point his guide, a meticulous Zithurian named Lysar, had moved ahead, and Max, distracted by a series of glowing symbols etched into the hallway walls, had wandered off. He thought he was in a corridor leading to a viewing gallery, but a strange doorway appeared before him, framed in soft, glowing symbols that pulsed faintly. The air felt warmer here, and there was a faint, sweet scent that made Max pause. Without thinking much, he stepped through the doorway. The space beyond was unlike anything he had imagined. The room was vast, filled with pools of liquid that shimmered in colors he had no names for. The surface of the liquid responded to his presence, rippling gently as he approached. Strange devices hovered above each pool, adjusting the temperature and light. Soft music, unrecognizable but soothing, seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. Max froze. For a moment, he thought he had stumbled into some kind of Zen spa for Zithurians. Then he noticed the subtle signs of luxury and privacy. The pools were divided in ways that suggested they were for individuals, and the air shimmered with protective energy fields. It dawned on him with a jolt. He had just entered the alien royal bath, a place reserved exclusively for the Virillian monarch and their closest attendants. Panic crept in. Max knew this was forbidden territory, and the thought of being caught here was enough to make him turn on his heels. He was about to retreat when he noticed something unusual. At the far end of the room, a holographic projection flickered to life. A tall, elegant Zithurian appeared, adorned in ceremonial garb. The figure began speaking in their native language, but Max did not need to understand the words to feel the weight of the message. The hologram seemed to be delivering instructions or discussing matters of great importance. Max crept closer, his curiosity winning over his fear. He crouched behind a decorative pillar, careful not to make a sound. The hologram continued speaking, and Max, straining to listen, realized that this was no ordinary conversation. The Zithurian monarch was discussing something Max had never imagined, something humans were never meant to know. The projection detailed a sophisticated network embedded in every Virillian citizen. It was a neural system, bioengineered and highly advanced, designed to regulate emotions and behavior. The monarch spoke about its purpose: to maintain peace, suppress violent impulses, and prevent conflicts. Max's mind reeled. Humans had long admired the Zithurians for their calm demeanor and harmonious society, but now he understood why. This was not natural behavior, it was engineered. Max felt a chill. He knew the implications of what he had just learned. If humans could study this system, it could change the balance of power in the galaxy. But it was also dangerous knowledge. Revealing it could destroy relations between humans and Zithurians, or worse, put him in immediate peril. He tried to retreat quietly, but his foot caught on a raised panel in the floor. A faint chime echoed through the room, and instantly the pools around him began to glow brighter. A soft hum filled the air, and the holographic projection flickered, as if aware of his presence. Max's heart pounded. He needed to escape before the palace AI realized what had happened. Thinking quickly, he darted toward the doorway, ducking behind a floating console as a beam of light swept across the room. The light scanned for intruders, adjusting its intensity with uncanny precision. Max held his breath, moving only when it passed. He could feel the neural energy in the pools reacting to his fear, sending subtle waves that tickled his skin and made his hair stand on end. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he reached the doorway. He stumbled through, back into the corridor he thought he had left. The warmth and scent of the royal bath faded, replaced by the cooler, neutral air of the palace hallways. Max pressed himself against the wall, trying to calm his racing heart. He had made it out, but he knew he was not unobserved. The palace AI was undoubtedly tracking him now. Its sensors were everywhere, subtle yet relentless. Any report of a breach would bring a swarm of Zithurian attendants or security drones. Max had to be careful. He considered retreating to the human embassy immediately, but he knew that even moving too hastily could attract attention. As he moved cautiously down the corridor, he thought about the holographic projection and what it had revealed. The idea of an entire species, behavior being controlled by a neural network, was staggering. The Zithurians appeared peaceful, creative, and wise, but all of it was guided by an unseen force. Max felt a mixture of awe and unease. Humanity prided itself on freedom and individuality, but here was a civilization that had traded freedom for stability. Max's thoughts were interrupted by a soft sound, a metallic click, almost imperceptible. He spun around and saw a small, floating device hovering in the air. It resembled a miniature drone with glowing sensors that scanned him carefully. He held up his hands in a gesture of surrender, hoping the device would not alert others. To his relief, it simply observed him for a moment, then floated away silently. Breathing a little easier, Max decided he had no choice but to return to the main palace halls and find his guide. He knew he could not risk staying hidden forever. As he walked, he noticed small details he had missed before. The walls were lined with intricate conduits that pulsed with energy, and small panels displayed information in a script he could not read. Every step reminded him that he was in a place far beyond human understanding. When he finally spotted Lysar waiting near the embassy delegation room, Max almost ran to him. Lysar looked calm, as if nothing unusual had happened. Max fell into step beside him, trying to act normal, but his mind was racing. He had seen something humans were not meant to see, and the knowledge weighed heavily on him. "Everything all right?" Lysar asked, his voice smooth and measured. "Yes, just exploring," Max replied, forcing a smile. "The palace is incredible." Humanity needed to understand it, but at the same time, he could not let anyone know he had been there. Over the next few hours, Max tried to focus on the diplomatic meetings and introductions, but his mind kept wandering. Every gesture, every word from the Zithurians suddenly seemed layered with meaning. The peaceful smiles, the careful language, the measured movements, they were all part of a system designed to keep society harmonious. That night, back in his quarters at the human embassy, Max sat by the window, staring at the glowing city of Zithra below. The towers pulsed with light, the streets shimmered with energy, and floating transport vehicles wove between buildings like glowing threads in a tapestry. Max felt both exhilarated and overwhelmed. He had stumbled into something monumental, something that could change humanity's understanding of the galaxy. But along with excitement came fear. The Virillians were powerful, intelligent, and highly advanced. If they discovered that he knew their secret, he could be in serious danger. And yet, he could not simply ignore what he had learned. The balance of knowledge, power, and ethics weighed heavily on him. As he finally lay down to rest, Max made a silent promise to himself. He would find a way to understand the neural network, its purpose, and its potential. But he would do so carefully. One misstep could ignite conflict, betray trust, or endanger his life. In the quiet darkness of his room, Max realized something fundamental. Curiosity was a double-edged sword. It had led him to a discovery that few humans could ever imagine, but it had also placed him in a situation where every decision carried immense risk. And deep down, he knew this was only the beginning. Max spent the next morning in a haze of thought, replaying every detail from the royal bath in his mind. The holographic projection of the Virillian monarch, the shimmering pools, and the strange devices that controlled them. All of it felt unreal, yet he knew he had seen it. He could not stop thinking about the neural network the monarch had described. A whole society guided by an invisible system that suppressed conflict and controlled behavior. It was unlike anything humans had ever encountered. He walked through the embassy halls, nodding politely at other delegates, but his mind was elsewhere. He needed answers, but he also needed a plan. If he tried to ask the Virillians directly, they would recognize that he had entered a forbidden place. And if the palace AI learned he had witnessed the secret, it might not just monitor him. It could take steps to neutralize the threat he represented. Max felt a knot of tension tighten in his stomach. During a break in the diplomatic meetings, Max found a quiet corridor and pulled out his small tablet, the one he used to record observations and notes. He began sketching a map of the royal bath based on memory, carefully noting the position of the pools, the hovering devices, and the pillar he had hidden behind. He wrote down every detail he could recall about the holographic projection, the language gestures, and the energy patterns in the pools. Even though he did not fully understand the technology, he felt that capturing it in detail might help him make sense of it later. After an hour of sketching and reviewing, Max realized something important. The neural network was designed to influence behavior through subtle signals in the environment. The pools, the energy fields, even the soft music, they were all part of a system that reached into every Virillian's mind. The Virillians themselves likely did not even think of it as control. It was simply life to them. That realization made him both fascinated and uneasy. Humanity prized free will, yet here was a civilization that had chosen stability over it. Max knew that understanding this system could take years, perhaps decades. But he also realized that small observations could provide insights. He needed to see the network in action. The problem was that access to the royal bath or the central neural hub was impossible for a human. He had already broken a major rule by entering the bath, and he could not risk doing so again. But maybe there was another way. That evening, Max decided to explore the city itself. Zithra was not only the home of the palace, but also the center of Virillian society. He hoped that observing everyday life might reveal subtle patterns of the neural network at work. He left the embassy quietly, walking through the glowing streets filled with floating vehicles and citizens moving with perfect harmony. The city pulsed with energy, and the colors of the buildings shifted gently in response to the movement of people. As he walked, Max noticed something remarkable. Even in crowded areas, there was a calmness among the citizens. No one bumped into each other, no voices rose in anger, and no disputes occurred, even minor ones. The precision and harmony were almost mechanical. Max wondered how much of this was natural behavior and how much was guided by the hidden network. He took notes discreetly, sketching flow patterns of people and the energy lines that seemed to connect them. While walking, Max observed a small group of young Virillians playing a simple game with floating spheres. Unlike the older citizens, these youth seemed slightly less controlled. There was laughter, excitement, and minor mistakes. Max smiled. Perhaps, he thought, the network's influence grew stronger with age, or maybe the young had not fully integrated into it yet. Either way, he saw a spark of individuality that the older citizens lacked. Suddenly, a bright light swept across the street. Max ducked instinctively, recognizing the scanning pattern of a patrol drone. It hovered for a moment, its sensors sweeping the area, then moved on without incident. Max's heart pounded. He realized that his presence in the city could not go unnoticed for long. If the palace AI connected him to the royal bath breach, he would be in serious trouble. He had to be cautious, or his curiosity might cost him dearly. Max found a quiet alcove and sat down, thinking. He needed allies or at least guidance. He had heard that some Virillians were more curious than others, willing to question certain traditions quietly. If he could find one of them, perhaps he could learn more about the network safely. But finding such a person was risky. Any misstep could alert the AI or loyal citizens. The next day, Max returned to the embassy library. Unlike humans, the Virillians had stored most of their knowledge digitally, but it was heavily encrypted and difficult for a human mind to process. Max spent hours going through records, studying Virillian architecture, social customs, and energy systems. Each piece of information helped him build a mental model of how the network influenced daily life. The more he learned, the more he realized how advanced the Virillians truly were. While reading, Max noticed a small message in the archive system addressed to embassy delegates, a cultural exchange program that allowed selected humans to observe Virillian society more closely, under supervision. Max's curiosity flared. If he could participate, he might have limited access to controlled environments where he could observe the network without being detected as a threat. It was not ideal, but it was safer than sneaking into forbidden areas again. He applied quietly, presenting himself as eager to learn. To his surprise, the application was accepted, and he was assigned a Virillian guide named Chiron, a young adult who had shown exceptional skill in observation and diplomacy. Chiron was calm, confident, and curious, yet slightly skeptical of human behavior. Max was relieved. If he could gain Chiron's trust, he might have a chance to study the network safely. Their first outing took them to a community center where young Virillians practiced arts, crafts, and problem-solving activities. Max observed subtle cues, the energy field subtly adjusting emotions, the music guiding concentration, and even the lighting influencing cooperation among participants. Every detail confirmed what he had seen in the royal bath. The network was everywhere, quietly shaping behavior for the greater good. Chiron noticed Max taking notes and asked politely, "You find our methods unusual. It's like giving up part of yourself for stability, but it's working. No conflict, no fear, it's impressive." Chiron was observant, intelligent, and willing to discuss matters that others might avoid. For the first time, he felt that he might have a chance to understand the network fully, without risking immediate exposure. Over the next few days, Max accompanied Chiron to various locations, training centers, public forums, and technological workshops. Everywhere he went, he observed subtle signals influencing behavior. He noted how people responded to small energy cues, adjusted movements according to light and sound, and communicated almost without words. Every detail added to the picture of a society deeply interconnected by the hidden network. Yet, despite all this, Max could not forget the royal bath. The image of the pools and the monarch's holographic projection haunted him. He understood that what he had seen there was the core of the network, the central hub from which all influence radiated. Observing the peripheral effects was fascinating, but the real knowledge lay at the center. Late one evening, Max and Chiron sat on a quiet balcony overlooking the city. The air was cool, filled with the soft hum of energy flowing through the buildings. Max finally voiced what had been on his mind. "I need to understand the core," he said. "The royal bath, the hologram, that's where the real control happens. I can learn a lot from observing here, but it's only a part of the system. The core is not accessible to outsiders. Even among our own people, few are permitted there. You understand the risk of asking too much. But it will not be easy. The system was built over millennia. Changing or even studying it from outside is dangerous. One mistake, and the delicate trust between humans and Virillians could collapse." That night, as Max lay in his quarters, he reviewed all his notes. He mapped patterns, tracked energy flows, and theorized how the network affected daily life. He knew he was on the edge of a discovery that could reshape human understanding of alien civilizations. But he also knew the path ahead was perilous, filled with unknown dangers and moral dilemmas. And yet, despite the risk, Max felt alive in a way he had never felt before. The accidental entry into the royal bath had changed everything. What began as a moment of curiosity had turned into a mission, one that might redefine the relationship between humans and one of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. Max Harper had stepped into the royal bath by accident, but now, he realized, he had stepped into a world of secrets, challenges, and possibilities that no human had ever faced before. The adventure was only beginning. Max Harper had been in Zithra long enough to feel like he understood its rhythms, yet every day still brought new surprises. He had learned to observe quietly, taking in subtle energy flows and patterns of behavior that most humans, and even many Virillians, ignored. But the royal bath and its secret network haunted him more than ever. He knew that understanding the system in depth was impossible without seeing the core, yet he could not stop thinking about it. Every experiment, every observation brought him closer to a truth that was both fascinating and dangerous. Chiron, his Virillian guide, had become more than a companion. They were cautious, intelligent, and willing to discuss ideas that others might consider taboo. Max had begun to rely on them for perspective, guidance, and support, but even Chiron could only take him so far. The true knowledge of the neural network, the one the monarch had spoken of in the royal bath, remained out of reach. One morning, Max awoke with a plan. If he could not access the core directly, he would study the peripheral systems more closely and look for patterns. Perhaps the network left traces in the environment, subtle clues that could reveal its structure. He shared the idea with Chiron during breakfast. "We must be careful," Chiron said, sipping a translucent beverage that shimmered with internal light. "Even small errors could be noticed." The palace AI monitors energy fluctuations, movement patterns, and even mental signals to detect anomalies. Only then can you begin to form a real understanding. The instructors subtly adjusted these fields, nudging students toward cooperation and precision. Max recorded every detail, noting how the fields interacted, how the music affected mood, and how visual cues influenced decision-making. The system was intricate, far beyond human technology, yet elegant in its simplicity. It was as if the entire society were a single organism, every citizen a part of its intricate web. As they observed, Max noticed something unusual. A small group of older students seemed less affected by the fields. They moved with slightly more freedom, made minor errors, and displayed flashes of creativity. Max's curiosity surged. Could there be individuals naturally resistant to the network? If so, they might hold the key to understanding its limits. "Look at them," Max whispered to Chiron. "These students see how they are less influenced. Is it possible to resist?" So there is a way to resist, even if only partially. That could be important. They observed citizens in public spaces, tracking minor fluctuations in energy fields, noting responses to environmental changes, and identifying moments when the influence of the network appeared weaker. Max was careful not to interfere, relying on careful observation and pattern recognition. One evening, they walked along a quiet bridge overlooking a canal of glowing liquid that flowed through the city. Max had been reviewing his notes when he noticed a strange pattern in the energy fields below. The flow of influence seemed to shift rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. "Do you see that?" he asked Chiron, pointing. "The pattern of the fields, it's pulsing." Maybe he could even find a way to interact with it indirectly. The idea thrilled him, but he knew it was fraught with risk. The palace AI would notice even minor anomalies if he acted carelessly. That night, Max stayed awake for hours, reviewing his observations. He sketched diagrams, mapped pulse patterns, and tried to model the network in simple terms. Every discovery raised new questions. How far did the influence extend? Could it be modified safely? And most importantly, could it be understood without endangering humans or Virillians? As Max worked, he felt a presence behind him. He turned to see Chiron, observing quietly. "You work too hard," they said gently. "The network is complex, yes, but obsessing over it alone is dangerous. This is too important." It was adaptive, capable of maintaining control while allowing small variations. The more he studied, the more he realized how sophisticated the system truly was. One afternoon, while observing a public forum where Virillians debated policy decisions, Max noticed a young Virillian displaying unusual independence. Unlike others, they did not seem guided by the surrounding energy fields. They spoke confidently, challenged ideas, and showed a spark of creativity that defied the network's influence. "Look at that one," Max whispered to Chiron. "They are resisting, partially at least." If individuals could resist, perhaps the network was not absolute. There might be ways to understand its limits without breaching the royal bath or accessing the core. He realized that studying these rare cases could provide insight into the network's structure and function. That evening, Max and Chiron followed the young Virillian discreetly, observing their interactions and noting moments when the influence of the network appeared weaker. The observations were subtle, requiring patience and precision. Every step had to be calculated to avoid drawing attention. As they worked, Max felt a growing sense of purpose. He was not merely witnessing an alien society. He was uncovering the hidden mechanisms that maintained harmony. Humanity could learn from this, not to control, but to understand how intelligence and cooperation could be nurtured. The stakes were high, but the potential for knowledge was greater. Over time, Max began to notice patterns. The network was hierarchical, with multiple layers of influence. Local fields adjusted minor behaviors, while citywide pulses maintained consistency and prevented conflicts. The central hub, located in the royal bath, coordinated everything, but the peripheral layers were accessible through careful observation. Max realized that understanding these layers could provide insight into the system without risking direct exposure. One night, as they reviewed their notes in a quiet study room, Chiron spoke. "You are close to understanding the secondary layers, but remember, the core is protected. You cannot access it directly. Any attempt could be catastrophic. But even understanding the secondary layers is valuable. It could help both humans and Virillians." For the first time, he realized that curiosity, courage, and careful observation could make a difference. He was not merely a visitor in Zithra. He was an active participant in uncovering a society's hidden mechanisms. In the following weeks, Max and Chiron continued their subtle observations, mapping patterns, testing hypotheses, and refining their understanding of the network. Max learned to recognize microfluctuations in energy fields, interpret changes in behavior, and predict the network's influence with increasing accuracy. Every discovery brought him closer to the truth, yet he remained acutely aware of the dangers. One evening, as they observed a group of young Virillians engaged in a creative exercise, Max felt a sudden surge of realization. The network was not just about control, it was about balance. It maintained order, yes, but it also allowed for growth, adaptation, and innovation within strict boundaries. Max understood that the Virillians had built a society that was both stable and capable of evolution, guided by an invisible hand. Max leaned back, taking in the scene. He felt a sense of awe and respect. Humanity could learn from this, not to replicate control, but to understand the principles that allowed a society to thrive while maintaining harmony. And yet, he knew the journey was far from over. The core remained out of reach, the palace AI remained vigilant, and the mysteries of the neural network continued to challenge him. Every step forward carried risk, but also promise. Max Harper had entered the royal bath by accident, but now he had become an explorer of one of the galaxy's most extraordinary systems, a mission that would test his intelligence, courage, and ethics in ways he had never imagined. The adventure was only beginning, and the path ahead was full of secrets waiting to be discovered. The days that followed brought a tense rhythm to Max Harper's life. He had grown adept at observing Zithurian society without drawing attention, but the palace AI's subtle presence lingered like a shadow. Every sensor, every energy pulse, every minor fluctuation in behavior could betray him. Max had learned to move quietly, to record his notes in hidden moments, and to blend with the natural flow of the city. Yet, he could feel that something had shifted. It began with small signs. The energy fields in the streets seemed to adjust slightly as he walked past. Patrol drones hovered longer, scanning areas he had just been in. Even Chiron, usually calm and perceptive, noticed the change. "The system is reacting," they said one evening as they walked along a quiet canal. "Something in your pattern has triggered a minor alert. The AI is monitoring more closely. One mistake, and the AI may escalate its response." The opportunity came sooner than he expected. A city festival was being held in honor of the Virillian arts, a celebration of creativity and innovation. Citizens were encouraged to participate, and the event allowed for greater freedom of movement throughout the city. Chiron suggested that Max accompany them, warning that it would be crowded and that vigilance was essential. Max agreed. Amid the luminous displays, floating platforms, and streams of colored energy, he observed patterns in motion and behavior that were impossible to notice under normal circumstances. The network adjusted dynamically to the festival, subtly guiding citizens to maintain harmony even in the midst of excitement. Max's notes grew more detailed, capturing micro-fluctuations, rhythmic pulses, and variations in emotional response. But the festival also brought unexpected danger. While observing a cluster of young Virillians, Max noticed the subtle energy pulses that indicated the AI was tracking his neural signature. The system had detected a deviation, a spark of curiosity, intensity, or observation that did not match the usual human pattern. Max felt his heart pound. "Chiron," he whispered, "it knows. The AI knows I've been studying too closely. Any sudden movement or unusual behavior could provoke a direct response. Continue gathering knowledge and risk exposure, or retreat and lose the chance to understand the network fully." The breakthrough came during a demonstration of Virillian problem-solving techniques. Participants were given complex structures to assemble, each piece responding to energy cues and subtle emotional signals. Max watched closely, noting how the secondary layers of the network interacted with participants, guiding them toward solutions while allowing for minor errors and creativity. Then he noticed a pattern, a series of pulses that seemed to originate from a location nearby, an off-limits zone connected to the central hub. The pulses were faint but consistent, as if the network were sending instructions directly to the secondary layers. Max's mind raced. Could he use these pulses to trace the network back to its source without entering the royal bath? It was risky, but it might be his only chance. "Chiron," Max said, lowering his voice, "I think I can map the network to its source. If I follow these pulses, I might understand the core indirectly." Max studied pulse frequencies, energy fluctuations, and the interactions between secondary layers. Chiron helped him interpret subtle cues, teaching him how to anticipate the AI's responses. They developed a system of indirect observation, relying on peripheral signals, reflection patterns in the environment, and micro-changes in citizen behavior. Every step was calculated, every action measured. One evening, Max set out alone. Chiron insisted he remain hidden, acting only as a consultant from a distance. Max moved through quiet streets, observing pulse patterns in walls, walkways, and public spaces. Each observation confirmed that the network was hierarchical, with instructions flowing from the central hub to secondary nodes distributed throughout the city. Hours passed. Max traced the pulses carefully, noting timing, intensity, and direction. It was painstaking work, requiring extreme focus. Yet as dawn approached, a realization hit him. He had mapped a functional path from the secondary layers back toward the central hub. He had not entered the royal bath, but he could understand its influence indirectly. Excitement surged, but so did fear. The AI had not detected any overt intrusion, but Max knew that a single mistake could provoke a response. He retraced his steps carefully, returning to the embassy just as the city awakened to a new day. Chiron met him quietly. "You have succeeded," they said, examining his notes. "You have mapped the influence without direct contact. This is remarkable, but you must not attempt more tonight. The AI may adjust its monitoring." In the following days, Max and Chiron analyzed the data, correlating pulse patterns with observed behavior in different parts of the city. They noticed that certain areas were more responsive than others, and that some individuals exhibited resistance or independence from the network's influence. These rare cases fascinated Max. Perhaps, he thought, they could reveal weaknesses or opportunities within the system without compromising its stability. Then came the unexpected twist. While observing a public forum from a hidden vantage point, Max noticed a subtle anomaly in the energy pulses, an intentional modification, not an environmental fluctuation. It was as if someone had been aware of his observations and adjusted the system accordingly. Panic surged through him. Had the AI detected their indirect mapping? "Chiron," he whispered, "someone is adjusting the network. They know we are observing. If it has noticed, it will test you carefully. You must remain calm, precise, and inconspicuous." He had come too far to retreat. Over the next several days, Max and Chiron adjusted their methods, using indirect observation even more carefully. They tracked subtle energy flows, noted responses to environmental changes, and refined their understanding of the secondary layers. Each discovery brought new insights, but also new risks. The Palace AI was an unseen but constant presence, testing, monitoring, and adjusting. Max realized that understanding the network required not just observation, but patience, discipline, and trust. He had learned to anticipate the AI's responses, to read energy flows, and to remain calm under pressure. Yet he also knew that one wrong move could end everything. Finally, after weeks of careful observation, Max reached a critical insight. The secondary layers were not isolated. They were interconnected in a dynamic web, each layer influencing and compensating for the others. By understanding these connections, Max could predict the network's behavior and perhaps even interact with it indirectly. The core remained out of reach, but he now held a key to understanding its influence. Chiron looked at him, their expression a mixture of pride and concern. "You have come far, but remember, Max, the core remains protected. What you have achieved is remarkable, yet dangerous. Any attempt to reach further must be weighed carefully." He had uncovered secrets that no human had ever known, mapped influence that few Virillians even understood, and survived the scrutiny of a system designed to detect anomalies. Yet the journey was far from over. As he lay in his quarters that night, Max reflected on how far he had come. What began as an accidental entry into a royal bath had grown into a mission of discovery, risk, and responsibility. He had learned that intelligence, patience, and courage were as important as curiosity, and he had realized that understanding the neural network was not merely a scientific endeavor. It was a challenge of ethics, diplomacy, and human ingenuity. The path ahead was uncertain. The Palace AI remained vigilant, the core remained protected, and the neural network continued to shape Virillian society in ways humans could barely comprehend. Yet Max Harper felt ready. He had come to understand the system, to anticipate its responses, and to navigate its dangers. The secrets of Zithra were within reach, and he was prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The adventure was far from over. The stakes were higher than ever, and the line between success and discovery or exposure and failure was thinner than a pulse of energy in the night. Max knew that every choice from now on would carry consequences, yet he felt a thrill that only came from standing on the edge of knowledge. And deep in his mind, one thought persisted. The royal bath, the holographic monarch, and the hidden neural network were not just secrets. They were the key to understanding a civilization far more advanced than humanity had ever imagined. Max Harper had survived scrutiny, mapped influence, and uncovered layers of the network that few Virillians fully understood. Yet he knew the final challenge loomed. The core, the central hub, the place where all control originated. That, he realized, would require ingenuity, courage, and trust, and perhaps the collaboration of an unlikely ally. The journey toward the ultimate discovery had begun. Max Harper knew the final stage of his mission was the most dangerous. He had traced the secondary layers of the network, mapped their patterns, and observed how the Virillian society responded to subtle cues. Yet the core, the royal bath and the central hub, remained untouched. To fully understand the network, and perhaps improve it for the benefit of both humans and Virillians, he would have to face the heart of the system itself. Chiron stood beside him, their expression calm but firm. The core is heavily monitored. No outsider, human or otherwise, has ever approached it directly without authorization. One mistake and the AI will isolate you, or worse, erase all access to the network. If we are careful, we can interact without triggering the system's defenses. I won't do anything reckless. He observed every energy pulse, every subtle fluctuation, anticipating the AI's monitoring patterns. The path to the royal bath was longer than he remembered, but familiarity helped. Every detail from his first accidental visit now guided him safely through the maze. As they approached the entrance, Max felt a thrill of recognition. The shimmering doorway, the soft scent, the warmth of the air. The royal bath was no longer a mysterious accident. It was a destination, a gateway to knowledge that had eluded humans for centuries. They paused at the threshold. The pools glimmered softly, reflecting the energy of the palace itself. Hovering devices adjusted the light and temperature, maintaining the delicate balance. And then, at the far end, the holographic projection of the monarch flickered to life. This time, it seemed aware, observing them with subtle intensity. Max and Chiron moved carefully, respecting the sanctity of the space. They did not approach recklessly. Every step was calculated. Max activated his observation tools quietly, monitoring energy flows, field interactions, and the subtle signals that coordinated the network. The hologram spoke in its native language, but Max's understanding of the system allowed him to interpret its meaning. The monarch was not issuing commands in a traditional sense. It was adjusting the network itself, responding to the presence of intruders, and subtly testing their intentions. Max realized that the network was not merely a tool of control. It was a living system, adaptive, intelligent, and capable of assessing motives. Chiron whispered, "It knows we are here. But it is not hostile yet." Every pulse, every shimmer, every micro-adjustment told a story of harmony, balance, and subtle guidance. Then came the breakthrough. Max noticed a section of the central hub where the energy fields fluctuated differently, a place where control was strong, yet adaptable. By carefully synchronizing with these fluctuations, he could interact with the system indirectly, nudging it without triggering defensive responses. It was delicate work, requiring intense concentration and precise timing. Chiron assisted, interpreting subtle cues, adjusting energy readings, and ensuring that the AI would not detect anomalies. Together, they formed a partnership of observation, trust, and skill, moving in harmony with the network itself. After hours of careful calibration, Max took a calculated step. He introduced a minor adjustment to the secondary layers, a gentle modification designed to allow more creativity while maintaining stability. The system responded instantly, adjusting other layers to compensate, maintaining harmony throughout the city. Max felt a surge of exhilaration. He had succeeded in interacting with the network without triggering a defensive response. The holographic monarch flickered again, this time in a pattern that suggested recognition and approval. Max realized that the system had not only accepted his presence but had also evaluated his intentions. The network was intelligent, capable of assessing morality, intent, and potential outcomes. Chiron looked at him in amazement. "You did it." The system responded without resistance. "You have improved it." "The network is still intact," still guiding society. But now it can allow more freedom, more creativity, without losing stability. By carefully understanding patterns, predicting outcomes, and introducing minor changes, he could improve the network without causing disruption. As dawn approached, the royal bath returned to its usual calm rhythm. The pools shimmered gently, energy fields settled into their standard patterns, and the holographic monarch observed silently, no longer flickering or adjusting. Max and Chiron had achieved what few could imagine: interaction with the core of the Virillion neural network, guided by careful observation, trust, and ingenuity. Max reflected on how far he had come. From an accidental entry to mapping secondary layers to interacting with the core itself, he had navigated a web of complexity, risk, and intelligence. He realized that curiosity, when paired with careful thought, ethics, and collaboration, could achieve remarkable results. Chiron spoke softly, breaking the silence. The system will continue to guide society, but now it can allow for more individuality, more human-like creativity, without losing the balance that has maintained peace for centuries. Humanity had proven that intelligence, morality, and courage could contribute positively to an alien civilization without exploitation or harm. He understood that this was the essence of HFY, humanity's ingenuity and ethics enhancing the galaxy rather than dominating it. As they left the royal bath, Max felt a mixture of relief, pride, and anticipation. The network had accepted their presence, incorporated their insights, and maintained harmony. The adventure had been perilous, yet the outcome was extraordinary. Humanity had made a mark not through force or cunning, but through observation, understanding, and respect. Back in the embassy, Max reviewed his notes, documenting every detail of the interaction. He understood that the knowledge he had gained was not merely technical, it was philosophical. The Virillion society was built on balance, intelligence, and subtle guidance. By carefully observing, respecting, and gently interacting, humans could contribute to its evolution rather than disrupt it. Over the following weeks, Max and Chiron shared their findings selectively with trusted human diplomats, emphasizing ethics, caution, and the importance of respect. The knowledge of the network's existence was carefully safeguarded, and its lessons were used to inform diplomacy, understanding, and collaboration rather than control. Max felt a profound sense of accomplishment. What had begun as an accident, the accidental entry into the royal bath, had transformed into a mission that tested intelligence, courage, and ethics. Humanity had proven that curiosity, when guided by respect and careful observation, could unlock extraordinary insights. One evening, as he walked through the glowing streets of Zithra with Chiron, Max reflected on the journey. Citizens moved with their usual harmony, children played with floating spheres, and the city pulsed with energy that was both alive and stable. The network continued its work, but now it had incorporated subtle improvements that allowed for more creativity, more individuality, and more potential for growth. Chiron glanced at him. "You have changed things, Max. Not just the network, but the way humans can interact with it. You have proven that our societies can learn from one another without conflict. From daring to observe and understand without harming." And though he would never again step into the royal bath accidentally, Max knew that the knowledge he had gained and the lessons he had learned would resonate for the rest of his life. Humanity had faced one of the galaxy's most advanced systems, understood it, and contributed positively. That, Max realized, was the essence of being human in a vast and wondrous universe. He had entered the royal bath by accident, learned a secret nobody should know, and emerged not as a trespasser but as a bridge between two civilizations, one human, one alien, and both capable of growth, understanding, and harmony. Max Harper had done more than survive. He had proven that humanity could rise to the challenge of the stars.